You walk into the grocery store and you're standing in the yogurt aisle. You reach for a container that says 90% fat free. It feels healthy, responsible, like a good choice. Then you glance at another container. It says contains 10% fat. Something in you recoils slightly. That one feels indulgent, maybe even a little guilty. And this makes absolutely no logical sense because those two yogurt containers are identical. Same product, same nutritional content. The only difference is the words on the label. And yet, your brain processed them as completely different realities. That right there, that split-second reaction you just felt, just hearing me describe it, is the framing effect in action. And it is quietly shaping more of your decisions than you will ever realize. Welcome to Mind Decoded. I'm Dr. Ann.
And I'm Zach. Dr. Ann, I have to admit something before we even get into this. I literally did the yogurt thing. I literally, last Saturday, stood in the grocery store, looked at two containers, picked the 90% fat-free one, and felt proud of myself. And now you're telling me they were the same product.
They were the same product. And Zach, what you just described is exactly why I'm so excited to talk about the framing effect today. Because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. You start noticing it everywhere, in the news, in advertising, in the way your friends ask you for favors, in how you talk to yourself. The framing effect is one of the most robust findings in all of cognitive psychology, and it was discovered by two researchers whose work fundamentally changed how we understand decision making.
Okay, so this isn't just a yogurt thing. This is an everything thing.
This is an everything thing. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, two names you're going to hear a lot if you hang around psychology and behavioral economics. They first demonstrated the framing effect in the late 1970s and early 1980s, and the study that really crystallized it for the world, the one that gets taught in every introductory psychology course, is what's now known as the Asian disease problem. This was a hypothetical scenario they presented to participants, and it goes like this. Imagine the country is preparing for the outbreak of an unusual disease, which is expected to kill 600 people. Two alternative programs to combat the disease have been proposed. Now, they split the participants into two groups. Group A got a choice between two options framed in terms of lives saved. Program A would save 200 people for certain. Program B had a 1/3 probability that 600 people would be saved, and a 2/3 probability that nobody would be saved.
So either you definitely save 200, or you roll the dice and maybe save all 600 or save nobody. That's a tough one.
Exactly. Now, Group B saw the exact same program, same statistics, same outcomes, but the wording was flipped. It was framed in terms of lives lost. Program A would result in 400 people dying for certain. Program B had a 1/3 probability that nobody would die, and a 2/3 probability that 600 people would die.
Wait, that's the same thing, right? Saving 200 people definitely means 400 people definitely die. Same outcome, different words.
Same outcome, different words. And here's the result that blew the doors off what psychologists thought they knew about human rationality. When the options were framed in terms of lives saved, 72% of people chose the certain option, save 200 for sure. But when the identical options were framed in terms of lives lost, that number completely flipped. 78% chose the risky option. The same people, the same numbers, the same probability, but the way the information was packaged completely reversed their preferences.
That is wild. So just to make sure I've got this, when it's about saving lives, people play it safe. When it's about losing lives, people suddenly want to gamble.
That's exactly it. And this isn't because people are bad at math or because they're irrational in some character flaw sense. This is your brain running a very specific program in the background. Kahneman and Tversky's insight, which eventually earned Kahneman the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2002, was that we don't evaluate outcomes in absolute terms. We evaluate them as gains or losses relative to a reference point. And here's the crucial part. We feel losses about twice as intensely as we feel equivalent gains. Psychologists call this loss aversion, and it's the engine underneath the framing effect.
Okay, so you're saying my brain is basically wired to freak out more about losing $20 than it gets happy about finding $20?
Precisely. And that asymmetry, that lopsided way we weigh good and bad, means that whether you present the same information as a gain or a loss completely changes how your brain lights up and what decision it makes. A 90% fat-free yogurt activates the gain frame. You're getting something good. A 10% fat yogurt activates the loss frame, you're incurring something bad. Same product, same objective reality, two different brains responding to it.
So this explains why I'm so bad at sales. When something is 40% off, that feels like I'm gaining a discount, but when I see the regular price, I just feel like I'm losing money.
Retailers have understood this for decades. And actually, one of my favorite real-world examples comes from the medical field. Researchers have found that when patients are told a surgical procedure has a 90% survival rate, they're significantly more likely to consent than when they're told the same procedure has a 10% mortality rate.
Oof. That one hits differently. That's not yogurt. That's life and death decisions being shaped by word choice.
It is. And this is where understanding the framing effect stops being just a cool party trick and starts being genuinely important for how you navigate the world. Because the frames are everywhere. They're in how politicians describe policies, tax relief versus tax burden. They're in how your boss frames a restructuring, streamlining for efficiency versus cutting jobs. They're in how you frame things to yourself. You might say I failed 3 times, or you might say I found 3 ways that don't work. Same data, completely different emotional and motivational impact.
Wait, okay, you just did something there. I need to pause on this because this is exactly what I do to myself. Last month, I was trying to learn a new skill. I'm not even going to say what it was, and I quit after 3 attempts. And the story I told myself was I tried 3 times and I couldn't do it. I failed. That was the frame. But objectively, the same reality is I learned 3 things about what doesn't work yet. And if I'd framed it that way, I might still be doing it.
Zach, that is a profound piece of self-recognition, and I want to honor that for a moment, because what you're describing isn't just a thought pattern, it's the framing effect turned inward, and this is where I think the psychology becomes not just fascinating, but genuinely freeing. Once you understand that your brain processes frames, not raw data, you can start to notice the frames you're using on yourself. And you can ask, is this frame helping me, or is it hindering me? Is it accurate? Is there another way to describe the same reality that might open up more possibilities instead of closing them down?
But why do we do this? Like, why would our brains evolve to be so easily manipulated by word choice? That seems like a pretty big design flaw, evolutionarily speaking.
Haha, okay, I love this question. And it's actually not a design flaw, it's a design feature that comes with trade-offs. Here's what I mean. In the 1990s and 2000s, psychologists started mapping out what's now called dual process theory. The idea is that we have 2 systems in our brain for processing information. System 1 is fast, automatic, intuitive, and emotional. It's always running. System 2 is slow, deliberate, analytical, and effortful. It requires energy and attention.
So system 1 is like the autopilot, and system 2 is the pilot who actually has to get into the chair and take the controls.
That's a great analogy, and the framing effect is largely a System 1 phenomenon. When you hear 90% fat-free, System 1 instantly, effortlessly, and emotionally registers it as a good thing. You don't have to calculate anything. You just feel it. Your brain uses the frame as a shortcut. And most of the time, these shortcuts, these heuristics, work well enough. They save energy and they're fast. The problem is that they're also predictable and exploitable, because once someone knows which frames trigger which System 1 responses, they can package information to essentially pre-select your decision for you.
So the yogurt company isn't lying to me, they're just framing.
Exactly. They're presenting factually accurate information in a package designed to trigger your brain's gain-oriented System 1 response. And look, once you understand the mechanism behind this, you might actually feel more compassion for yourself. Because this isn't a character flaw, it's a brain feature. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do. It's taking shortcuts. It's being efficient. It's just that in a modern world full of carefully engineered frames, those shortcuts can lead you to make choices that don't actually align with what you'd choose if you paused and engaged System 2.
So how do I know when I need to engage System 2? Because I can't analytically process every yogurt label. I'd never leave the grocery store.
And that's the practical question that actually matters. Because no, you can't and shouldn't try to override every frame. Your brain relies on these shortcuts for a reason. The goal isn't to eliminate the framing effect. The goal is to become aware of it and to develop the ability to pause and reframe when the stakes are high. So here are a few things I've found genuinely useful. First, when you're making a decision that matters, a financial decision, a medical decision, a relationship decision, practice what's called frame flipping. Take the information as it's presented to you, and then deliberately rephrase it in the opposite frame. If someone says this investment has a 70% success rate, reframe it. This investment has a 30% failure rate. Same numbers, see if it feels different.
Okay, so basically check my own gut reaction by forcing myself to look at the other side of the coin. That's actually really simple.
It's incredibly simple, and the research shows it works. A second thing, pay attention to absolute numbers, not just percentages. This is a big one. 90% fat-free feels very different from 10% fat, but they both describe the same grams of fat per serving. If you can find the actual number, the frame loses some of its power when you look at the raw data underneath it.
So strip away the adjectives and just find the math.
Strip away the adjectives and find the math. And the third thing, which I think is maybe the most important, is to notice the frames you use on yourself. You already did this a few minutes ago when you recognized that I failed 3 times, and I learned 3 things are the same reality in different frames. That's not just self-help talk, that's applied cognitive psychology. You're literally catching your own brain using a loss frame and choosing to try on a gain frame instead. And that little shift can change your motivation, your persistence, and your emotional experience of setbacks in pretty significant ways.
You know, I've heard people say reframe your thinking, and I always kind of rolled my eyes a little like it was just positive thinking fluff, but this is actually hard science. There's a Nobel Prize behind this.
There's a Nobel Prize behind this. And honestly, once you understand it this way, as a cognitive architecture thing rather than a just think positive thing, it changes how you judge yourself for it. You're not being manipulated because you're weak. You're being manipulated because you have a human brain, and the framing effect is baked into how that brain processes information. The question isn't whether you're susceptible to frames. You are. We all are. The question is whether you're willing to notice them.
Before we wrap up, because I feel like I could talk about this for another hour, I want to ask about one more real-world thing. Social media, the news. I feel like every headline I see is framing something. Is that just me being paranoid?
It's not paranoia at all. News media and social platforms are master framers. A headline that says unemployment drops to 5% and one that says 5% of workers remain unemployed are reporting the same statistic, but they frame it either as a gain or a loss. One emphasizes improvement, the other emphasizes the problem that persists. Neither is factually wrong, but they create very different emotional realities in the reader. And this selective framing shapes public opinion, voting behavior, even how we feel about our own economic futures.
That's kind of terrifying, actually. But also, I don't know, empowering because now I can see it.
That's exactly the right word, empowering. Because once you see the frame, you're no longer just inside it. You have a choice. You can step back and ask, what's the other side of this coin? What's the absolute number? What would this same reality look like if it were presented differently? And those questions, those simple System 2 questions, are how you reclaim your decision-making power from the framers. Whether the framer is a yogurt company, a news outlet, or your own inner critic.
So my takeaway from this conversation, and I want to make sure I've really got it, is that the framing effect isn't a bug in my brain. It's a feature. And features can be used well or poorly. When I'm aware of it, I can spot frames and make better choices. And I can also use frames carefully, honestly, to help myself when I'm stuck.
That's beautifully said, Zach. And I'd add just one thing. The framing effect reminds us that our minds don't process reality raw. We process it through language, through context, through the way information is served to us. And that means that the words we choose for ourselves and for others aren't just descriptions of reality. In a very real sense, they help create reality. That's the gift and the responsibility of being human.
So, the question I want to leave our listeners with is this. Think about a decision you're facing right now. Maybe something you've been going back and forth on. How is it framed in your mind? Is it framed as a gain or a loss? As something you might achieve or something you might fail at? And if you flipped that frame, just to see what happens, what new possibilities might open up?
That's a wonderful question to carry into your day. If this episode gave you a new lens to look through, make sure you're subscribed to Mind Decoded. We release a new episode every single day, unpacking one psychological concept that actually explains how your brain works. Share this episode with someone who's been making a tough decision lately. It might help them see it in a whole new light. I'm Dr. Ann.
And I'm Zach. Thanks for decoding your mind with us today. We'll see you in the next one.